So the next morning, about daybreak, my father said, go out and see if they got any of the meat off the top shelf and come back and let me know. So I walked out to the back shelf and I saw his feet sticking out of the rain barrel, the legs and knees, but his whole body was head first down into it. And it just scared me, at that minute I said, well, I killed him, I killed him. And so I went back in to the house and I still couldn't see who the person was that was in the rain barrel. And so I went in to tell my dad. He said, oh my goodness, he said, well, I'll tell you what you got to do, son. He says, you got to leave here and go down to our neighbor, John Kitchen, which he lived about a half a mile, and tell him what happened, and tell him to get a hold of D. Arthur Wilson in Chicksdale, Oklahoma. He was a sheriff, a very good friend of my father's all his life, and tell D. Arthur to come out here. And in between, after Mr. Kitchen got to a phone, he had to go to a little store down the road to call. He got to a phone, and he come back, and he took the man out of the barrel. And it was our cousin, and that really made Dad feel bad, because Dad would have gave him the food, knowing that it was our relation that did this, and it was our cousin, but he had a real bad record of thievery and everything, just everything bad, cattle stealing, chicken stealing. All his life he'd done that. So really, it wasn't a big loss, I guess, to the people there of his death. So when D. Arthur Wilson got out the next morning, he went out and looked at him. He said, Leon, he said, you did a good job on him. I said, no, sir. I said, he jumped in that barrel. I didn't have nothing to do with that. I remember telling him, I said, I had nothing to do with that. I was just trying to scare him out of the porch. He said, I'm not blaming you. He says, it's not your fault. He says, you did what you had to do. He says, he says, we're in a time that food means as much as anything in the world. If you don't have food, you don't live. And he says, we're not putting no blame on you. And it did. It put a lot of blame on me because I felt it in my body and everything. And so D. Arthur just took his body, and he had a little A model truck, or maybe even a T model, I don't remember, A model, and he put the body in the back of his little pickup and covered it and took it into town. And he told my dad, he says, it's over with. He says it was all self-defense. It would come down to it because he opened your door and come inside. And he says, it's over. And he said, nothing else to come over. And so, but anyway, Mr. Kitchen has called my sister and sent on my half-sister and told her what happened. And she said, I'll be there as quick as I can. Somebody's got to do something with him, And so here she comes, all 500 miles, and a big old Buick. And she says, I'm taking you and Dad back to Texas. And either one of us didn't want to leave a farm because we loved it. But Dad was too sick to live there. He wasn't able, he couldn't make it. And so he called people, come in and get what they want out of the house. Give them anything they want. She just wanted to get rid of the farm and get us out of there. So she found Mr. Kitchen, bought the farm for $800. That was 100 acres, house, farm, barn, and the animals went to different people that father gave them. And when it comes to my guns, we had about 5 guns. We had my little gun, had my dad's big rifle, and had a couple of double barrel shotguns and things like that we used for hunting. And I said, I want to take my gun with me. She said, no. She said, you're not going to touch a gun ever in your life again. And she pulled me by the hair. I remember that. And she kind of clawed my face with her long fingernails, and I hated her at that time. I hated her. I never knew her very much until then. And here she takes us back to San Antonio, and that's another life. It was like in limbo or whatever, you know. It was like getting ready to go to hell, but he was waiting to get in there, and that's what her home was. It was like her home was hell, and I was ready to step into it. And that's where misery came in my life after that time. And that about completes this little story. That it was a horrible time. The only thing I would say about this, it was a horrible time in the Depression, and in that sand bowl, nobody would realize what it was. The sand would blow sometimes 8 to 14 hours without stopping. And sometimes you had to dig your way out of your house after a big sand blow. And you had to take all your windows and seal them completely so that you could breathe inside your house. Nobody knew what that was unless they lived there. And I really think back to that family. I went back and visited them. The mother and father were still living. And I went back after I was grown and married with my beautiful wife. And I visited their family, which they still lived where they lived. And I walked in and I felt that they was going to hate me for what happened. But they didn't. They hugged me and said, "Oh, I haven't saw you since you were a little boy," and all this, and tell me how I used to go hunting by myself and everything at 5 or 6 years old. And it made me feel good. And I told his mother, I said, "You know, I'm telling you right now, if I knew that shot was going to cause him to die, I wouldn't have made it. I would just let them have what they wanted. My father would have too. And we just sat down and let it happen." And she said, "We don't blame you. We knew what Doug was. He liked to steal." And she said, "We've been through it most of his life. And that's it." She said, "I have nothing else to say about it." It made me feel a little better in life. I could go on and think, well, at least his mom don't hate me for this. But every day of my life, it comes back to memory to me. I look out and I see that long porch there I saw the next morning as I looked down through there, and I saw the screen torn off and some meat halfway off the shelf, some of it was laying on the ground. And evidently, the bullet hit him when he was pulling the ham off the shelf, because the ham dropped right straight down. So evidently he had the ham. And then the Arthur Wilson said that it was some buckshot in the meat, that we need to watch it when we cooked it. You know, he told my father, he says, "I looked out there," and he said, "Some of the buckshot might have went into your meat." He says, "Don't just cook it." He said, "Check it out." Well, we knew that, you know. We used to having buckshot in meat we ate, because everything we ate had buckshots in it one time or another. And so my dad said, "Yeah, I understand." So evidently the man was holding that ham when I hit him. And so he was a thief. He's a thief in the night. And it's nothing worse than a thief in the night. And that's all I got to say about this part of this video. Thank you.